If you've been listening to my podcast for more than a month now, and you haven't had a single piece of content that's gotten over 300 shares, then this episode could be one of the most powerful episodes that you ever hear. Now, what I just did there is something I call self-identifying. It's getting your subconscious mind to go, oh my gosh, that's me. And I want to show you exactly how you can do that inside of your marketing. So if you're interested, keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, I have a great episode for you. Today, we're going to play off of this concept about self-identifying inside of marketing. It's this new concept I've been playing around with our own stuff. I've been really studying and looking at a lot of different people's content. A lot of people that have taken off really fast, that have really big followings, that give a lot of ahas and breakthroughs. I've been kind of like going down this rabbit hole of what do they do? What are those invisible things going on inside of their content, inside of their messaging that are really getting people to connect? And the deeper I went down this rabbit hole, the more things started to become clear. And this is why I know messaging is one of my zones of genius and why it's my purpose in this moment, is because when I work with people or when I read a book or when I look at content, I'm able to see the things that most can't see. There's like a feeling where I know if some messaging is going to be good and some messaging isn't going to be good, or if we're hitting it or we're not hitting it before it even goes out. And I'm able to kind of look at what someone's doing and get a feeling of what is going on. And a lot of the times people will call this intuition. Like when I'm working with a client or a student, I get this intuition or this feeling of something is going to hit or not hit. And I have this intuition of why something's good or not good. And intuition usually can't be explained. You can't break intuition down on a framework. However, what I've been doing recently is when I get these intuition hits, I've been looking at what elements cause that hit. Let's make a list of elements that are actually going on inside of this piece of content or this person's message or whatever. And let's keep track of that. Let's keep a log of what elements are coming up when your intuition is going off. And then over time, when I start looking at these elements that cause my intuition to start firing, I started to realize a couple of things. The invisible became visible. And one of those concepts, one of those things that I've recognized that a lot of people that are really doing well right now have amazing messages, amazing content, are selling their products is, and this is something I've been doing as well, so you may have seen it in our own marketing, is they've been using this term that I'm calling self-identifying. These self-identifying terms. And basically what this is when someone consumes your piece of content, your marketing, or your message, whatever you're saying gets them to self-identify. And this could be a couple different ways. They could either self-identify, I'm that person that they're talking to, I have these problems, I am trying to get here. But they don't have to think about it. They self-identify there. And this is something I've been talking about for a really long time. Your audience shouldn't have to think about whether or not they like you or your copy resonates with them. They should automatically feel it. Their subconscious should be firing, oh my God, that is me. But most people never do that. Most people are very generalized with their messaging, generalized with their content. They use terms like, you might be feeling overwhelmed. It's like, yeah, well, everyone's feeling overwhelmed in every single industry and every single niche, right? I can take the word overwhelmed and I can put that on a weight loss coach's website, a window washing company's website. I can put it on a messaging coach, business coach. I can put it on pretty much anyone's sales page, and the term overwhelmed is still going to be relevant and it's going to make sense. Most people never get specific enough where if someone was to take that piece of copy or that message and put it onto someone else's sales page, it wouldn't make sense. It has to be very, very specific. And when we get specific like that, we get people to self-identify. And there's a couple ways in which this can happen. Number one is they self-identify, I'm the person with the problem. I am the person they're talking about. Or they self-identify, I want to be where they're going, or I want those benefits and that desired outcome that they're talking about. Or they can self-categorize themselves. Oh my gosh, I'm in the category or the group that they're talking about. Or they label themselves as someone who has those problems or in that category. And a great example of this is someone I've been watching for a while, who is the holistic psychologist, who I think I started following her when she was about a million subscribers, and now she's close to, 4 or 5 million. But she's really good at getting people to self-identify or categorize themselves or label themselves. And she talks about things like trauma and ego, awareness, conscious parenting, or not parenting, but just being a conscious person. She talks about bringing up a conscious society. But what she does is she starts to describe certain scenarios and things in her content that when you read it, you go, oh, that was me, or oh, that was my parent. But she also constructs a lot of content into categories, like here was the ego-driven parent, here was the strict parent, here was the da-da-da-da-da. And you start to read through these very specific descriptions. And what starts to happen is you read through those, you automatically go, oh, that was my parent, or that is me, or that is this scenario over here. And you start to self-identify, I'm in this category, I'm this person over here, I'm whatever. Now, that's just one example. That's just one person using this concept of self-identifying. I use this all the time inside of my content. We talk about avatars. We talk about struggling avatars. And we talk about how they should be and can be an older version of yourself. Because when you speak to an older version of yourself, you know the exact thoughts that you're having, the feelings you're having, the things you are doing, the mistakes. And when you start to describe things at that deep level and being that deeply specific, people start to self-identify, oh my God, that is me. So inside of my content, when I say things like, if you're doing 70% how-to content or more, and you've been plateaued for 3 months, that's a very specific way of describing a problem or actions that people are doing that gets people to go, oh my God, yeah, I am doing that. But if I was to say, instead of saying you've been doing 70% or more how-to content and you've been plateaued for more than 3 months, if I would have said something like, you've been doing mostly tutorials and you're overwhelmed and plateaued and wondering why things aren't working, well, that may or may not hit people. It might, but it's not going to hit on the deep level that getting specific would have gotten to. Because when I start using numbers and specific actions and specific items, people's subconscious automatically go, wow, that is me. Now, I'm going to give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. And I'm going to talk about a couple ways that you can start getting very, very specific inside of your content. So specific that you start getting people to self-identify that you are talking about them. Now, before we do that, I want to talk about one of the problems that most people have, and this might be you. One of the problems that cause people to stay very generalized, to not get people to self-identify, to not speak to the subconscious, is they start speaking from their perspective. Or they start speaking from what they know the audience needs to know, or what they think the audience needs to know, or what they know the audience needs to realize, versus meeting the audience where the audience is at. So let me give you an example. If I was a weight loss coach and I knew that I was really good, I knew that I was a really good weight loss coach, and I knew that the main reason that people can't lose weight is not because they don't have the right diet or the right workout plan. It's because of their subconscious beliefs and programming. And I know that they need to change and reprogram their subconscious and their beliefs and their habits. Like, as the coach, I knew that was the problem. What I'm not going to do, and this is what a lot of people do, is they will start their upfront content saying things like, I'm going to help you reprogram your subconscious mind to lose weight. The problem with that is that if the audience, the general public, doesn't already know that they need to reprogram their subconscious mind, they look at that and they go, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I don't need to do that. Because the audience thinks the problem is their diet, or their lack of knowledge around exercise, their lack of knowledge around diet, or they don't have the right diet. Maybe they might think it's habits. They might think it's habits. I just don't have great habits. Or they might think it's something else, right? But if I come out and say, you just need your subconscious reprogrammed, and I try to sound very smart, and I try to show how smart I am and how well I know the subconscious reprogramming thing to help people lose weight, people get tuned out because I'm not meeting the audience where they're at. Now, inside the Video 4X program, I have really deep exercises that talk about reality, how we form reality, how our subconscious mind will form reality. And the reason why I talk about that inside the program is because when you understand this really simple but powerful concept and you apply it to your life, you can now create very effective content because you've gone through that experience yourself and now you know how to do it for your audience. We do that inside our program, but you have probably never heard me ever talk about that. Why? Because the reason why you're probably coming to us is because you want help with messaging or mindset and different things like that. You're not coming to me because you want to understand what reality is. I might talk about it a little bit, but I hardly ever talk about that. Why? Is because I start to create content and messaging, meeting the audience where they're at. I don't talk about things that I know you're going to need to know. I don't talk about things that aren't really relevant. I don't talk about levels, like let's say there's 10 steps to my process. I don't talk about step 7, 8, 9, 10 in my content because I want to meet the audience where they're at. I want to meet them at step 1, but I want to communicate step 1 differently than they've heard step 1 ever communicated before. That's what this is all about. And when we can do that, and the way we communicate differently is by getting very, very specific. And when we start to get specific, we start to get people to self-identify they are talking about me. And again, they don't have to logically think about it. They just know and they feel this is me. So I gave you that example with the weight loss, that you need to meet people where they're at. You don't meet people from where you are. You don't talk about the things that you know that they need to know, or the things that you know they haven't realized yet, or the things that make you sound really smart because your work is so deep. We don't start off with that stuff. In fact, some of it may never even come up in the top of your content. It might, depending on your business. But for me, there's stuff that's really deep that I never talk about in my upfront content, but we do talk about it inside the program. Okay. So step 1, if you want to start using this self-identifying concept in your marketing, very first step is meeting people where they're at. What are their steps that they're taking to try to fix the problem? What are the problems they're having? What are the actions they're taking? What are the beliefs that they have? What are the things that they're thinking? What are they trying? What are they doing? Or even coming up with things that they may not have realized yet, but they're still doing or not doing. For example, when I talk about how-to content and how that keeps people stuck, I will talk about that in a lot of detail and get very specific with it. And people realize, oh, I didn't know that, but I know it now. What I'm doing is I'm talking about the things that they're doing right now that they haven't realized are creating a problem. Again, it's all about meeting them where they're at. What are they doing? What are they thinking? What mistakes are they making? What things are they doing right now that they haven't realized yet that I can bring into their awareness? Those are all great steps and questions to start asking yourself if you really want people to start self-identifying inside of your content. Okay. So generalized is something we want to avoid. Let me give you a couple more examples of this. So if you want people to start self-identifying with you inside of your content, we want to avoid generalized messaging, generalized content, generalized communication all the way. Like, just get it out of your head, get it out of your vocabulary. I'm going to give you a couple examples. I wrote some down of the difference between generalized versus specific. So if I was a window washing company and my marketing just said, are your windows dirty? Or have your windows been dirty for the last 6 months and you need them clean? That's a little more specific, but it's still very, very generalized. And there might be people that go, yeah, my windows are dirty, but yeah, I'm good. I don't need this fixed. But if I was a window washing company and I knew I was going, like, most of my market, most of the neighborhoods were like 1-story houses, for example, I might try marketing that says something along the lines of, are you tired of having water spots on your windows because the sprinklers are hitting them every single morning? If so, we specialize in removing those pesky window spots because we clean your windows and then we put on a layer that prevents them from ever coming up again. So instead of saying, are your windows dirty? We're now getting very specific on a very specific problem. What starts to happen is when we get very specific and I start to describe, are you sick and tired of waking up in the morning with your cup of coffee, looking over your window and seeing water spots from your sprinklers, but you can't change your sprinklers because they need to hit the plants? Well, we're the company for you. What starts to happen is when they get specific, and I am that person standing there in the morning with my cup of coffee, looking at my windows, I will self-identify and go, that is me. And I think the problem with most people's marketing, messaging, and content is there's never a focus of getting the audience to say, that is me. Because when we get the audience to say, that is me, without them thinking about it, your marketing becomes 10 times more effective. They start to self-identify, that person is talking about me, that is the exact problem that I have. And you can't do that with generalized messaging, with generalized communication, generalized content, generalized marketing. It will not happen. And if I can take your copy and your language and put it on one of your competitors' websites or something like that, or sales pages, and it still makes sense or is very similar to something they have on their sales page, then you're generalized. If you're saying the same thing, like if you look at your sales page and you look at 3 of your competitors' sales page and you guys are using the same language, then you're generalized. And as we get deeper into this episode, I will talk about how to get more specific, but also very accurate. I'll talk about that. But before we do that, let's go through another example. Because I was talking to my wife about this and getting, well, I guess before I was recording this episode, I was sitting with my wife and I started going through this concept with her. And I like to throw things at her because she's not in the industry. And I just want to make sure that when I communicate, I'm making sense to her. Because if I'm making sense to her, then I know it's making sense to everyone else, just because she's not familiar with the space. And she's like, oh yeah, it's kind of like this. And she gave me this example. And she said sometimes, like after having a baby, she would walk into her closet and she would say, "Ugh, I hate my clothes." And she told me that's a very generalized comment. And so if someone was helping women pick out their clothes, or a stylist, and they said, "Do you hate your clothes? Feel like you always hate your clothes?" That's a very generalized way to look at something. But if they said, "Do you walk into your closet and you hate your clothes because nothing fits and you just had a baby and you're in an adjustment period, but you don't actually want to go out and buy new clothes because you know you're going to adjust back to your weight," well, I have the perfect solution for you. And now what we're doing is we're narrowing down to a very specific scenario. But when we get specific, we get the user, the listener, the person consuming the content to self-identify, this person gets me. This person is speaking to me. This person understands my scenario. And if you're not getting your audience to think any of those thoughts, then you're generalized. You're not getting them to self-identify subconsciously that you can solve their problem. Just by speaking specifically to people allows them to self-identify, I need help and this person can help me. Now, when I look, and I'll reference back to the holistic psychologist, one of the things that she does, there's a couple things that she does, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. And I recommend you go follow her because, first of all, her content's great and can help you in a lot of different ways. But second of all, the way in which she creates her content is messaging gold. It really allows people to self-identify I'm a problem or I have a problem and this is the person that can help me. But there's a couple of things that she does. Number one is she's accurately specific. This is a term that I'm kind of creating. And there's a lot of people that do this. Tony Robbins is the same way. A lot of the people I use as examples. Simon Sinek is another example. Brene Brown's another one. But they are all accurately specific. And when I say accurately specific, what I mean is they get very, very specific on certain things, but everything they get specific on is so accurate that the majority of the audience goes, yes, that's me. For example, when I say things like your content is, you're doing 70% or more of how-to content and you've been plateaued for 3 months or more, that for most people is accurate. For most people that I help have that exact problem. But the way I word it, that could be true for a beginner entrepreneur or a 7-figure entrepreneur, right? You've been plateaued for more than 3 months. And generally, I know because I've worked with so many people, the people that get the biggest breakthroughs or need the program the most are the ones that have been plateaued for 3 months. And they're usually plateaued because they do 70% or more tutorial-based content. So it's accurately specific. That's the key word, because I don't want you to get specific for the sake of getting specific. I don't want you to leave this episode going, Brandon told me to get specific, so I'm going to get so specific that it only applies to 1% of my audience. No, you want to get specific in a way where it still applies to 90 to 100% of your audience. And Holistic Psychologist does that. And there's a couple of ways in which she does it, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But there's a couple other things she does. She gets accurately specific, which allows people to self-identify, categorize, or label themselves. She also gives explanations to the perceived unexplainable. So what I mean by this is she gives explanations to things that people perceived as unexplainable, like, oh, I've always done it this way, or I've never thought of it this way, or something that's never even entered their head. You know, for example, one of my biggest battles as a parent is that I actually respond emotionally. Like if my son does something or it's too crazy in the house and they're both all screaming, I will just automatically subconsciously respond to that versus being mindful and present, which is something I'm working on as a parent, and then asking myself, how do I navigate this scenario? So I know for me, that's my biggest battle, but I've never sat there and thought, well, why do I react that way? I just look at, well, I need to fix that. But the holistic psychologist's content will give an explanation. Like she'll literally do a post that says something along the lines of emotional reactivity broken down in 4 steps. And it literally explains why that might be occurring in my life. So she gives explanations to the perceived unexplainable, things I never questioned or thought about. And we do that as well. When people are stuck with their content and they've been doing everything the gurus have told them to do, how to content survey their audience, and they don't know why, one of the reasons why we took off is because we explain that why. We explain the unexplainable to our audience. If you've been listening to our messaging and you've been going, oh my God, this is blowing my mind, it's because I'm giving an explanation to something that was unexplainable to you. You didn't understand why you were stuck with content. You didn't understand why you were stuck with messaging. You didn't understand why you weren't seeing any results because you knew your content was good, but you didn't know why. Most people, when they listen to my stuff or I do a talk, the first part of it is me explaining the unexplainable to people. And I do it in a very accurately specific way, which allows people to self-identify, but also gives them these mind-blowing moments. Again, it all comes down to being specific and getting them to self-identify. And usually when you explain the unexplainable to people, They self-identify that you are the person for them. They self-identify, I am a part of this community because this is the person that's going to help me. Now, the next piece of this that holistic psychologist does really well, and we actually do it as well, is giving a deep why to an unwanted experience you can't get rid of. Again, this is another way you can start to add value other than just teaching. If there's an unwanted experience that your audience is having in their life, and you can explain why that's happening. Again, this is giving kind of like giving an explanation to the unexplainable. This is another way to add value in someone's life. Giving someone realizations is a massive, massive way to add value into their life. And again, this is something we've been doing for a long time. This is something I look for when I do our podcast episodes. What is something they haven't realized yet? What's an unwanted experience that they have that they can't seem to get rid of, but they can't get rid of it because they don't even understand why it's here in the first place? Let me start to give some answers as to why this is even here in the first place versus how to get out of it. Because sometimes people can't get out of scenarios if they don't even know why it's occurring in the first place. And all of you have an opportunity to do that. When you get specific, when you give explanations to the unexplainable, or you help them understand why something is occurring in their life, you start to get them to self-identify. You start to get them to self-identify, I have the problem, or that is me, they have the solution, this is the person I need to help me. Those are all ways to self-identify. Now, the big question is, well, Brandon, how do I do this? Like, I understand the concept of this. How do I start to do this? Well, there's a couple things that I would want you to focus on. Number one is we have to get specific, which you've heard me mention plenty of times on this episode. So literally think about what specifically people are doing. Think about their problems, think about their thoughts, think about their actions, think about what you were doing. If you went through the same problem yourself that you're now helping people go through, well, what were you doing? What were your thoughts? Look at your audience. What are they actually doing? What buttons are they clicking? What things are they doing throughout the day? What thoughts are they having? Specifically describe them. Get very specific. Now, the specific side of this is where the self-identifying will come in. When we're specific, we get people to self-identify, that is me. If you want someone to say, that is me, get specific. If you can't get specific, then you're going to be generalized. And if you're generalized, you're going to blend in. Now, most people ask me, well, Brandon, how do I get specific? And I will tell you right now, and this might be a little harsh, so if this is you, don't freak out. But if you want to get specific, that usually comes from having some level of mastery or knowing. And if you can't get specific, in most cases, that's because you're trying to teach from the knowledge phase, not the experience phase or the knowing phase or the mastery phase. So knowledge, for those of you who haven't heard me say this before, knowledge is the same thing as reading a book on how to ride a bike, but you've never actually ridden the bike. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there are a lot of people out there that are regurgitating information and trying to teach things that they themselves have never actually done, which again, I'm not knocking that. There's a lot of people that can do really well with that. But what I am saying is that if you want to get specific, understanding how to get specific usually comes from experience. It comes from knowing. It comes from because you've ridden the bike and you fell down a couple times and you know the feeling of it. You specifically can describe what feelings people are going through, what emotions they're going to feel, what things they're trying to do to ride the bike, what the feeling is like. If you have a level of mastery over riding bikes, you can go even deeper with this. And if we look at the top people out there, the top influencers, the top thought leaders, and not even influencers, the top thought leaders out there, they usually have a level of mastery which allows them to communicate deeper than everyone else. So if you can't get specific, I challenge you to start going after getting that knowing. Go put things into actions. Go try to master your craft. Have a level of mastery in what you do. Instead of trying to be an expert, try to be the master of it. Try to be that thought leader of it. And when I look at people like the holistic psychologist, the reason why she gets so specific is because she has a level of mastery of the work. After working with so many people, she likely can see the space differently than everyone else. So she has a deep level of mastery. If we want to get specific so that people will self-identify inside of your marketing and your content messaging, you have to have more knowing. And you have to have more experience, and you have to have some level of mastery or focus on mastery. The second part of it is, yes, we need the specific side, but we also need the education side. However, this is what I call realization education. The holistic psychologist focuses really heavily on what I call realization. And her name's Nicole. I don't know why I keep calling her a holistic psychologist, but Nicole, Dr. Nicole, I don't remember her last name. Sorry if you're listening. Realization education. Realization education is something that we've been doing as well, and this is what gives people the ahas. This is not information education, but when you can combine specific things that people are doing and realization education is when you explain the unexplainable to someone. It's when you can explain why they're having an experience that they don't want. It's getting them to realize, oh my God, that is exactly me. So when I say, I'm going to give you an example of this right now. When I say things like, you are an unheard entrepreneur if you are doing 70% tutorial-based content and you've been plateaued for 3 months or more, you are the unheard entrepreneur, because when we focus on tutorials, you start to say the same thing as everyone else, all the other experts, or at least you're perceived to say the same thing as everyone else because you all have content that says how to lose 10 pounds when you're a weight loss coach. What starts to happen is people go, wow, that was specifically me. I am doing 70% how-to content. I have been plateaued for 3 months. And now I understand why, because tutorials don't allow me anything other than giving steps. And when we're all giving the same steps, then we blend in. That has specific elements, but it also has realization education. Bringing people to realize things they haven't realized before that are actually causing their problems. When you combine those two together, you start getting self-identifying marketing, where people go, oh my God, you blew my mind. That's an aha. And you also get them to go, that is me. Subconsciously, they go, that is me. And then if we want to take it a step further, once we do that, once we combine this specific thing with realization education, we can start to shift perspective by showing them a better way, showing them the more efficient way, the better way, the newer way, whatever it is. You start to shift their perspective, which is something we stand for here. So those are the elements there, but there's one major block that I want to address before we wrap up this episode. The number one objection I get from people when I tell them to get specific is they go, well, Brandon, if I get specific, then I know that there's going to be a percentage of my audience that isn't going to relate. And it's a very simple thing to overcome. The easiest way to get around that is to list out specific items. What I mean by this is when I say you're an unheard entrepreneur, if you've been doing 70% how-to content and you've been plateaued for 3 months, that's one way to get specific. Then I could say, or 90% of your content is driven from survey results. You survey your audience, you do everything they want. Or you focus mainly on popular keywords and topics and high search volume keywords. And I list like 4 things. And then when I wrap it up, I can say, now, if any one of those is something you do, then you blah, 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 blah. And I can also wrap it up with, and if one or more of those things is relatable to you, then you really are the unheard entrepreneur. But the thing is if you get specific, the biggest fear is, well, then I'm not going to be relevant to a high percentage of the people. And that's, first of all, it's not true, number one. But number two, well, great, come up with more specific items that you can rattle off, because all you need to do is have one specific thing hit the audience. If I list 10 things and I'm specific on all of them and only one of them is relevant to that audience member, I have them hooked. Their subconscious is paying attention to what I'm saying. So you don't need to completely describe 100% everything in their life, but you do need to get specific. And as long as one of those things that you're saying hits them, well, now they're hooked. Now they are self-identifying. And if you want proof of that, then all you need to do is go look at the holistic psychologist, because she's great at listing out a lot of things. And not all of it will be relevant to you. But when that one hits, you're hooked. You feel, oh my God, they are describing me. And if more of them hit, well, then you're even more hooked, because it's speaking to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind starts to fire. Oh my God, they're talking about me. Oh my God, I am doing exactly that. You start to self-categorize yourself. You start to self-identify of a problem. You start to self-identify, this is the person that can help me. And so as I wrap up this episode, I just want to recap real quick. The main thing I want you to take away from this episode is that you have to get your audience to self-identify that they have a problem, number one, that you are the person, and you do that by getting very, very specific. We don't meet the audience we do meet the audience where they're at. We don't meet them from where you're at. We don't talk about the things that you know they need to realize, or the things that you know will actually fix their problem down the road, or like the really deep things. We want to meet them where they're at, and then we can bring them to the deeper stuff. We don't want to be generalized. We want to be very specific in what you're saying. Some of the things to focus on is you want to be accurately specific. You want to explain things that they perceive as unexplainable. You want to give a deep why to an unwanted experience that they can't get rid of. This is what I call realization education. When you combine specific items, and the way we get specific is by speaking from a level of mastery, knowing, experience. We get specific, we combine that with realization education, and then we follow it up by shifting the perspective and giving them a better way, or helping them out of a scenario they're in. That is kind of the trifecta of a really effective piece of content or messaging or marketing. And if you're really nervous about getting specific, then all you have to do is list specific items or actions. And when you list it, as long as one of them hit, then the person is hooked subconsciously. So if you enjoyed this episode, what I'd love for you to do is to share this episode and tag me at I am Brandon Lucero, and let me know. Because this is a new concept. This is something I haven't talked about for a while. This is something that I have been sitting on for a while. And if you like this and you want more podcast episodes like this, let me know by tagging me. And if you haven't yet, head over to iTunes, leave us a review. I would be so grateful for that. And for everyone listening, I'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.